A world once spoke in breath alone. No ink, no stone tablets, just the living thread of a voice travelling from elder to child beside embers and starlight. In that world before Cristus, memory was not a thing you could hold in your hands. It was a flame guarded in the mind, a rhythm taught by heart, a song that had to be sung each season, or it would fall silent forever. When storms came, when hunger pressed, when wanderers crossed mountains and left no path behind, a single broken link could erase a people's entire library in one night. Imagine how many empires dissolved that way, not in battle, not in ruin, but in the quiet moment when the last storyteller closed their eyes and no apprentice leaned close to learn the cadence. This is where our mystery begins. What if the world we inherit is a chorus with most of its voices missing? What if the fragments we call myth are not fantasies at all, but the final syllables of long songs that once explained the sky, the earth, and the ages that rose and fell between them? Listen closely, and you can hear the same motifs drift across oceans. An age of light, a fall, a deluge, a scattering. Names change, costumes change, but the melody remains. It is as if one great memory shattered, and each shard kept a piece of the tune. The earth itself forgets. Rains smooth the scripts cut into stone. Rivers lay blankets of silt over foundations. Coasts slip and drown. Forests climb over avenues and pretend they were always there. The planet keeps building new skin over its old scars, and the deeper you look, the more the strata speak in riddles. Somewhere under clay and salt and coral, the first versions of our oldest stories are still sleeping. Not lost, only buried by time and by water and by the hands that preferred silence. You and I have been taught to trust parchment more than a voice, dates more than dreams. Yet, the oldest certainties we still carry did not come from books. They came from breath and repetition. They came from nights like this one, when the darkness is gentle and the mind opens its door to memory. Close your eyes, and you may feel a strange recognition, as if you once knew a map that no longer exists, as if, once upon a time, you could name the constellations by stories that do not appear in any atlas, as if you remember a coastline now sleeping under the sea. Who benefits from this forgetting? Who profits when a single cataclysm becomes 100 unconnected tales and 1,000 quarrelling schools? If there was a world before Cristus that looked nothing like the one we are shown, it would be easiest to hide it not by burning every record, but by letting the oldest library vanish, the library of living voices. And so, in this calm hour, I will keep the vigil with you. I am Mr. H, your guide through the shadowed corridors of time on Mystery History for Sleep. If these whispers stir something ancient in you, you are welcome here. Breathe slowly, settle deeper. We will follow the faintest echoes next and see what the myths and the dreams remember. The human mind is an archive far older than any temple or scroll. Long before Cristus, when the first cities were still only sparks on the horizon, our ancestors dreamed stories into being. They spoke of floods that swallowed the earth, of suns that fell, of beings that taught the use of fire and vanished into the sea. Those tales did not begin as metaphors. They began as memories wrapped in wonder, retold so often that over centuries the facts wore down into symbols. Yet, within every myth, a pulse remains, a heartbeat of something once seen, once feared, once loved. Every corner of the world hums with versions of the same melody. The Babylonians sang of Utnapishtim and his ark. The Greeks mourned a vanished island beyond the Pillars of Hercules. The Celts told of drowned kingdoms beneath the western waves. The Maya, the Maori, the Yoruba, the Inuit, each kept stories of deluge, of skyfire, of the day the mountains sank. Scholars call it coincidence. But what if it is continuity, the faint signal of a single catastrophe that memory refused to release? Myth is the earth speaking through the tongue of dream. When a people cannot preserve the record, they preserve the feeling. A tremor of dread, a glow of reverence, an image that refuses to fade. These feelings become gods and monsters, heroes and curses. They become Atlantis, Tartaria, the garden, the fall. We inherit them thinking they are separate, never suspecting that they may be fragments of the same lost epic. Dreams are the subconscious repeating what myth has forgotten. Modern science measures waves and pulses, but it cannot explain why the sleeping mind returns again and again to water, to falling, to endless light. In the drifting hours before dawn, millions dream the same scenes. Cities half submerged, towers cracked and gleaming, a horizon split by flame. They awake unsettled, unaware they have wandered through ancestral ruins that no map can name. Perhaps the collective dream is not imagination at all, but the soul's attempt to remember a world erased. Imagine that the stories told by every grandmother at the edge of every fire were coded instructions, warnings passed down through metaphor. Survive the flood. Remember the stars. Beware those who break the balance. Each time a child heard them, a piece of ancient knowledge survived another generation. But as languages fractured and empires rose, the code decayed. The warnings became bedtime tales. The truth turned to poetry. And so, myth became dream, dream became symbol, and the memory of a real world slipped behind the curtain of legend. Now, as you lie listening in the quiet, you may feel that curtain tremble. In the dim corridors of sleep, the old stories wait. They whisper that the world before Cristus was not barren and primitive, but luminous, a place of harmony, perhaps hubris, perhaps both. The dreams you do not yet understand may be their voice calling back through time. I am Mr. H, and in the next whisper, we will step deeper into that silence, where geology and memory meet, and where the earth itself may confess what the storytellers tried to hide. Beneath our feet lies a labyrinth of forgetting. The earth is not a static record keeper. It is a restless creature, always swallowing its own past. Mountains rise, then crumble. Oceans spread their salt fingers across continents and pull back again, leaving no trace but a line of shells glinting in stone. Volcanic fire remakes entire horizons. Ice grinds the world smooth. In this endless motion, memory itself is eroded. The planet rewrites its story with each heartbeat of time, burying the evidence of what came before Cristus beneath new layers of rock and bone. Imagine the continents as pages in a book that has been rewritten so many times that the original ink has bled away. Archaeologists dig into those pages, hoping to glimpse a sentence from the first chapter. But the Earth's handwriting is cruel. It covers old words with new sentences, compresses entire epochs into inches, erases borders between legend and layer. A city might sink, a valley might rise, and in a few thousand years, only the wind will remember where they once stood. Somewhere under the silt of vanished coastlines and the sediments of forgotten lakes, there may still rest the outlines of lost civilizations. Sonar scans in the Indian Ocean reveal geometric patterns beneath the waves. In the Caribbean trenches, divers brush their hands over smooth, squared stones. In Antarctica, satellites catch strange shadows under the ice, too precise to be chance. Science catalogues these as anomalies, but anomalies are often the first whispers of truth. If a single catastrophe once reset the world, its proof would not stand tall and visible. It would lie crushed in the folds of the planet, preserved only in the layers that no one has yet disturbed. Consider this. In Greenland's ice cores, thin lines of soot mark sudden fires that burned across hemispheres 12,000 years ago. In Siberia, the tundra still hides the bones of creatures frozen mid-breath, as if death had struck in an instant. Around the world, you find deposits of fine mud laid down all at once, sealing everything beneath them. Geologists explain these as isolated events. But when you lay the layers side by side, the puzzle pieces fit together into a single wound that circles the globe. The Earth is old, but its memory is not infinite. Every earthquake, every eruption, every flood is a page torn out of its diary. What we now call prehistory might not be pre at all. It might simply be the chapters we have not yet recovered. Each layer conceals a world, and each world tells a different version of humanity's story. The further we dig, the stranger those stories become. Tonight, as you listen, picture those hidden layers breathing quietly below you. Imagine the buried mountains, the drowned cities, the silent fossils of things that were never meant to vanish. The Earth remembers more than it reveals, but it cannot hide everything forever. I am Mr. H, and when we meet again, we will follow those fragments of buried truth to the next echo in our journey. The faint voices of civilizations that refused to die quietly. Across the world, there are whispers in stone, not the grand monuments that everyone knows, but smaller things, misplaced things, a coin with the wrong alloy, a carving whose style belongs to no known era, a wall built with precision that the tools of its supposed builders could never match. They are the murmurs of a forgotten choir, fragments of a story the Earth has tried to erase. Each time an explorer brushes dust from an artifact that should not exist, the silence of ages trembles. Imagine walking through a desert where the dunes shift to reveal something impossible. A staircase leading downward, edges still sharp, though the wind has scoured the land for thousands of years. Or diving in dark water and finding beneath the coral a perfectly cut block of granite fitted to another like the teeth of a key. These are not illusions. They are fragments of voices that still speak from the depths. They tell us that the world before Cristus was not empty or primitive. It was articulate, mathematical, and aware of the cosmos in ways we are only beginning to rediscover. Some voices speak through architecture, the alignment of temples with distant stars, the repetition of sacred geometry across continents that never met, the echoing acoustics built into chambers where a single chant could vibrate through stone. All of it suggests a language beyond words. Other voices come from objects small enough to hold in a hand, a lens carved from crystal, a mechanism of interlocking gears found in a shipwreck older than history, a map showing coastlines that would only appear after the last ice sheets melted. Each one hums a faint note of defiance, a reminder that the past is far more complex than the textbooks admit. But these fragments are scattered. They appear in isolation, torn from their context. A statue unearthed in the Andes bears markings found also in Mesopotamia. A burial mound in Siberia mirrors one in the Scottish Highlands. It is as if the world once shared a single vocabulary of symbols, a global script fractured by disaster and time. We find its letters in different corners, but the syntax has been lost. What remains are echoes, beautiful but broken, like shards of a mirror that once reflected the same sky. Perhaps the greatest tragedy is not that we lost their words, but that we stopped listening. Scholars catalogue anomalies only to dismiss them. Museums hide the inconvenient. Excavations end when funding ends, and what does not fit the story is quietly boxed away. Yet the earth continues to speak in its patient dialect of erosion and exposure, revealing what it must when the moment feels right. Every unearthed fragment is an act of rebellion against forgetting. As night deepens, imagine those fragments forming patterns beneath the surface, connecting in ways unseen. Perhaps they are waiting for someone who will hear the full chorus again, someone who will understand the rhythm that binds them all. In the next whisper, we will trace that rhythm into the mystery of time itself, and question whether our idea of history is only a shadow of a greater cycle repeating endlessly beneath the stars. Time is the last illusion, the soft veil that convinces us of order. We chart it in hours and years, in calendars carved from the movements of sun and moon, believing that the past lies behind us and the future ahead. Yet the deeper one peers into the fossil record and the mythic archive, the less linear it appears. In the world before Cristus, time may not have been a straight road. It may have curved like the horizon, looping upon itself in ages that rose and fell with the rhythm of breath. Ancient civilizations spoke of cycles, not progressions. The Hindus named them yugas. The Greeks called them ages of gold and iron. The Mayans spun calendars that wound endlessly back into their beginnings. Each era ended in fire, flood, or darkness, only to be reborn. To them, the apocalypse was not final. It was renewal. The stars themselves traced this truth. Constellations drifted across the sky over thousands of years, returning at last to their starting points as if to remind humanity that nothing truly ends. Our modern sciences flatten those spirals into lines. They pin each ruin to a date, each fossil to a stratum, and call the sequence truth. But even geology, that most patient of disciplines, reveals interruptions. Whole layers are missing, shaved clean by forces unknown. Fossils of creatures long thought extinct appear where they should not. Radiocarbon readings contradict themselves, hinting that the clock of the Earth does not always tick evenly. time skips, it folds, it forgets. And in those folds, entire worlds may hide. If a civilization once mastered these cycles, if it understood the turning of cosmic seasons, it might have predicted the deluge that swept it away. Perhaps it even tried to warn its descendants. The Great Pyramid aligned to the belt of Orion, the stone circles of Britain marking solstices, the temples of the Andes tracing equinoxes. These could be more than observatories. They might be messages left for us to read when the stars return to their former places, a reminder that another ending approaches. Consider this unsettling thought. The reason we cannot find the evidence of the world before Cristus may be that it did not vanish millions of years ago, but only yesterday in cosmic terms. If time bends, if memory resets, then the ruins of that age could stand beneath our cities now, only hidden by perception itself. What we call progress might simply be the echo of a forgotten dawn. As you drift deeper into this quiet hour, let that possibility settle in your mind. Time is not a ruler, it is a tide. It erases and returns, conceals and reveals. Perhaps you have walked these paths before, lived beneath the same stars in a world that looked nothing like this one. The question of time is the question of who we truly are. Visitors in an endless loop of creation, or survivors of a single catastrophe repeating itself across eternity. I am Mr. H, and as we leave this first chapter behind, we step from silence into remembrance. In the next whisper, we will uncover the remnants of that earlier world and listen to what still breathes beneath the dust. Across the ridges of forgotten continents stand the bones of a memory too vast to measure. Monoliths rising from jungles, pillars set in spirals across windswept plains, stones fitted so perfectly that even today a knife cannot slip between them. They defy erosion, they defy logic, and they defy the tidy sequence of our textbooks. These are the megaliths that refuse to belong to any date. They whisper of a time before Cristus, when architecture itself was an act of communion with the earth and sky. Take the stones of Baalbek in Lebanon. Each block weighs hundreds of tons, some over 1,000. Engineers admit they could not move them with the cranes of the modern age. The quarry lies uphill from the platform they built, as if gravity itself once obeyed different rules. The Inca walls of Cusco curve with seismic grace, stones locked together like puzzles molded rather than carved. In Japan, beneath the waters of Yonaguni, steps descend in geometric precision, edges unsoftened by time. On Easter Island, statues stare toward the horizon, as if watching something that never returned. These structures are scattered like breadcrumbs across continents that never should have shared design or method. Yet each hums with the same harmonic proportion, the same sacred geometry. Scholars assign convenient dates, tens of thousands of years apart, but the stones disagree. Weathering on the Sphinx points to rainfall that has not touched Egypt for millennia before its supposed construction. Lichen on megaliths in Europe suggests ages beyond recorded civilization. Magnetic anomalies around certain sites imply energies once harnessed and then abandoned. It is as though these monuments belong to a single world that predates all nations, a network of builders working to a plan the earth itself remembers. Some say these were temples, others say observatories. Yet their alignments are too precise to be mere ritual. They mark solstices, eclipses, and equinoxes with the accuracy of modern instruments. When light falls through their corridors at exact moments of celestial change, it is as if the stones themselves are keeping time for the planet. This is no coincidence. It is intelligence carved in granite, endurance encoded in weight and silence. Imagine the world before Cristus, not as scattered tribes, but as a civilization fluent in stone, speaking through vibration and resonance. Their language was gravity, their script geometry. When the flood came, whatever its form, these monuments endured as memory made solid. Perhaps they were never meant to last forever, only long enough to guide whoever came after, whoever would stand amid the ruins and feel that strange pulse in the air, the hum of forgotten power waiting to be recognized. As you listen now, picture yourself walking between those monoliths under the quiet of starlight. The air hums faintly, the stones breathe. Each surface is a page, each angle a word, in a language the wind still speaks. We call them relics, but perhaps they are warnings or invitations. The megaliths do not age. They endure, immune to our clocks. They are the last standing syllables of a conversation between humanity and the cosmos. I am Mr. H, and in our next whisper, we will follow the trail beneath the waves to where the sea keeps its own archives, and the ruins of that vanished age lie sleeping under the tides. Beneath the waves lies the world's most secret library. The ocean keeps its silence well, swallowing mountains, forests, and cities until they become myths. Yet, every so often, the sea allows us a glimpse, a flash of structure beneath the blue, a line too straight to be nature, a step descending where no shore should be. These are the ruins that resist explanation. They belong to no empire, no timeline, and yet they stretch across the planet like a half-buried constellation. Off the coast of Japan, at Yonaguni, divers glide over terraces carved in right angles, staircases plunging into darkness. Scholars insist they are natural formations, but the symmetry tells another story. Each platform aligns with the rising sun of a forgotten equinox. Along the Caribbean shelf, sonar scans reveal the outlines of avenues and plazas beneath miles of sand. In India's Gulf of Cambay, explorers have found artifacts carbon dated to 9,000 years ago, long before civilization is said to have begun. Columns stand half-buried, pottery rests untouched, and a faint grid runs beneath the silt as though a city sleeps below the tides. Further west, in the Mediterranean, the island of Malta is scarred with mysterious cart ruts that vanish into the sea, as if their builders watched the water rise and had no power to stop it. Off the coast of Cuba, deep-sea robots have mapped geometric shapes, pyramids and streets arranged like a drowned metropolis. The scientists who glimpsed them returned silent, their data quietly classified. Beyond the Straits of Gibraltar, sonar readings hint at concentric walls lying under mud and coral, echoes of Plato's rings of Atlantis. Whether true or illusion, each site hums with the same unsettling pattern. Civilization drawn into the sea in a single, global drowning. The ocean floor is a time capsule, sealing what fire or conquest could not destroy. Sediment settles like the dust of eternity, layer upon layer, until light can no longer touch what it buries. If these ruins truly exist, then they mark the borders of a world that ended not millions of years ago, but perhaps in an age when our ancestors still walked the shorelines and watched the water rise with terror. Could this be the world before Cristus, a global network of coastal cities erased by one sweeping event, their survivors reduced to mythmakers and wanderers? Imagine standing at the edge of that ancient catastrophe. The ground trembles, the sea withdraws in silence, and then returns as a wall of water, taller than the horizon. Whole nations vanish in minutes, their temples and towers dragged into the deep. The survivors climb mountains, carrying fragments of their knowledge, the measurements of stars, the geometry of the megaliths, to rebuild what they can before memory fades. Over time, the flood becomes a story, then a warning, then a dream. Even now, the ocean whispers that memory through its currents. When you listen to the crash of waves, you hear the breath of worlds that no longer exist. The sea is not empty. It is an archive, and every tide recites a line from the book of what was lost. As night settles, imagine those ruins glowing softly in the abyss, waiting for a curious light to find them again. I am Mr. H, and in our next descent, we will journey into the drowned continents themselves, the lands that maps forgot, where the shapes of ancient worlds still linger beneath the water's veil. The ocean hides continents that once breathed air, not small islands or coral reefs, but entire landscapes, mountain ranges, valleys, riverbeds now patrolled by fish and silence. Long before Cristus, when ice gripped the poles and the sea stood hundreds of feet lower, the world looked utterly different. Coastlines stretched farther, bridges of land stitched continents together, and civilizations could walk across what is now the ocean floor. When the waters rose, they carried whole histories into the deep, leaving only the ghosts of geography behind. Off the coast of India lies a region once called Kumari Kandam, the fabled cradle of the Tamil people. Ancient poems describe cities that touched the edge of the horizon, swallowed by the sea in a single night of storms. Scholars call it legend, but beneath the waves near Dwaraka, divers have found walls and pillars where no natural formation should exist. To the south of Japan, the Ryukyu Trench hides another possibility, the remains of a lost Pacific continent that some call Lemuria, others Mu, a land that ancient writers described as a bridge between Asia and the Americas. Across the world, from the coast of Cuba to the shores of Portugal, explorers find the same riddle, structures at depths that only make sense if the ocean once stood far lower. If entire kingdoms now lie beneath miles of salt water and time. Modern science acknowledges fragments of these stories. Doggerland once stretched between Britain and Europe, a vast plain rich with rivers and forests. Then, around 12,000 years ago, a single surge ended it. Today, fishermen still pull ancient tools from their nets, flint blades shaped by hands that never saw the modern sun. Near Australia, the Sunda Shelf hides traces of another drowned realm where early humans once lived in abundance. Even Antarctica, buried beneath its armor of ice, shows the outlines of mountain ranges that appear shaped not by glaciation, but by erosion, as though wind and rain once touched them freely. What if these were not isolated sinkings, but parts of a single continental collapse, a planetary reshaping that ended an age? Some geologists whisper of rapid crustal shifts, of the planet's poles moving almost overnight. If such upheaval occurred, it would have unleashed tsunamis that circled the globe and buried every shore. The survivors would have fled inland, their children inheriting legends of a world beneath the sea. Those legends still breathe in every flood myth we tell. Picture, for a moment, the memory of those lands. Great plains of gold grass stretching, where the North Sea now churns. Towers reflected in shallow bays that no longer exist. Roads that once gleamed under a sun, now filtered through water and silt. In the quiet of night, when the tide is low and the horizon hums, you might feel their outline under your feet, a phantom geography mapped in dream. The earth did not lose these places. It folded them away like forgotten pages, waiting for us to remember. And as we drift through that remembrance, the question deepens. If continents could vanish in an instant, what else could be taken? Knowledge, language, the very memory of who we were. In our next whisper, we will follow the hidden patterns that tie these ruins together, tracing the invisible lines across the planet that suggest a design too deliberate to be chance. I am Mr. H, and the night grows deeper. Listen closely. The Earth is still telling its story. Across the surface of the planet, invisible threads connect the ancient world like veins beneath the skin of memory. When seen from the sky, those who study the old maps notice something unsettling. The great monuments, the megalithic sites, the temples, and the sacred mountains seem to share alignments that stretch across continents. It is as if the builders of a forgotten age carved the planet itself into a grand design, a geometry drawn not for art, but for communication. Trace a line from the Great Pyramid of Giza across the Earth, and you find it touches Easter Island, Nazca, and Angkor, each sacred to a people who never met. Extend it further, and it grazes ancient sites in the Sahara, now buried in sand. The line is too precise to dismiss as coincidence. The same pattern repeats elsewhere. Stonehenge shares astronomical symmetry with the temples of the Nile. The ruins of Tiwanaku mirror the rising of specific stars, seen also by the builders of the Maya world. Even more haunting, some of these alignments match the placement of magnetic anomalies, places where compasses tremble and time seems to slip, as if the stones were anchored to forces deeper than we understand. What purpose could such global precision serve? In the age before Cristus, navigation by the stars was sacred science. The sky was a map, and the earth its mirror. Perhaps these alignments formed a worldwide observatory, a network tuned to the rhythms of the heavens. When one site greeted the solstice, another would echo it on the far side of the globe. In that harmony, a kind of planetary consciousness emerged, a dialogue between land and sky, matter and light. To stand within one of these ancient circles was to feel the pulse of the entire Earth. Modern explorers often rediscover these patterns by accident. Satellite imagery reveals geometric alignments stretching through jungles and deserts, connecting ruins long buried. The Nazca lines, visible only from the air, may once have been a part of this language of precision, a message not for men, but for gods who watched from above. In Peru, at Sacsayhuaman, the walls curve and fold with mathematical elegance, their orientation echoing constellations overhead. The same ratios appear in the Giza Plateau, in Angkor Wat, in the temples of Cambodia and the Andes. How could cultures separated by oceans and centuries speak in the same numerical dialect? Unless they shared an inheritance we no longer remember. The alignments might not be mere architecture. Some theorists whisper that they map the ley lines of the planet, currents of geomagnetic energy that ancient builders could sense and shape. Standing stones might have been more than monuments. They could have been conductors, tuning forks for the Earth's hidden frequencies. To build along those lines was to harmonize human life with the planet's own vibration. The flood, the tilt of the poles, the reshaping of the continents, these may have shattered that network and plunged the world into silence. Now, in our age of satellites and electricity, we are unknowingly rebuilding it. Our cities glow along the same invisible paths. Our data travels in grids that mirror the old ley lines. Perhaps the memory of that geometry never left us. Perhaps we are repeating a design that once kept the world in balance. As the stars drift above you tonight, consider this. Every constellation you see once shone over those builders, guiding their hands. When you look up, you are tracing their compass. The alignments remain, waiting to be read. I am Mr. H, and in our next whisper, we will follow the map even deeper, into the forgotten charts and ancient drawings that reveal the world before Cristus as it truly was. A world whose cartographers might have seen the entire globe long before we thought it possible. Long before Cristus, someone mapped the world as if they had seen it from the sky. Not from a mountaintop, not from the deck of a ship, but from a vantage point far above the clouds. These are the forbidden maps, artifacts so precise they balad should not exist. They whisper of continents unrecognized, coastlines drawn before they were discovered, and ice-free lands that today lie frozen beneath Antarctica's shroud. They are not simply old, they are impossible. Take the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, who claimed his sources came from charts far older than Greece or Rome. On its yellowed parchment, Antarctica appears not as a wasteland of ice, but as a detailed coastline, accurately traced as if surveyed when the continent was warm and habitable. Modern sonar confirms the match between those outlines and the actual bedrock beneath the ice, an accuracy our civilization only achieved with 20th century technology. Yet the map's creator lived in an age of candles and sails. Who, then, made the originals he copied from? The riddle deepens with the Orontius Phineas map of 1531, showing Antarctica's rivers and mountain ranges in uncanny proportion, or the Boache map of 1737, depicting the same land split into two islands, exactly as modern seismic readings confirm. These cartographers described their work as restorations of ancient knowledge. But whose? The same question haunts the Zeno map, drawn before Columbus, which outlines Greenland and the Canadian archipelago with startling precision, and the Chinese charts of Admiral Zheng He, rumoured to have circled the globe long before European exploration began. Even stranger are the world maps hidden in medieval monastic libraries that depict the world's poles, magnetic lines, and celestial alignments, as if their makers understood the curvature of the earth centuries before Galileo dared to say so aloud. Scholars dismiss them as coincidences or lucky guesses. Yet, the mathematical constants embedded in these drawings, ratios of pi and the golden mean, angular correspondences with star clusters, reveal a design language consistent across cultures that supposedly never met. Some believe these maps are relics of the civilization erased by the Great Flood, Atlantis, Tartaria, or the world before the Cataclysm. If true, their cartographers might have used instruments that harnessed magnetism or resonance to see across distances, mapping coastlines through sound or energy rather than sight. Others whisper of aerial vantage points, of ships that sailed not the seas but the skies. When examined together, these ancient charts suggest an awareness of global geography that defies the fragmented isolation of post-flood humanity. It is as if the survivors of that lost age tried to preserve the memory of their world before the waters took it. Picture an ancient scholar seated before a bronze compass, the air shimmering with the scent of oil lamps. He traces the curve of the earth from memory, guided by stories passed through generations. His hand trembles, for he is drawing not from imagination, but from grief, a map of the world as it once was, before the deluge tore it apart. Each line is a remembrance. Each coordinate a prayer that one day the descendants of the survivors will rediscover what was lost. And perhaps, in a way, we have. Our satellites now orbit where those myths began, redrawing the same coastlines, scanning the same mountains beneath the same stars. The forbidden maps were not wrong. They were simply early. The question that remains is how their makers knew what only the heavens could reveal. As you rest beneath the quiet sky tonight, imagine the world as they once saw it. A single, unbroken expanse, continents joined, oceans calm, humanity united under one knowledge. That image, folded in parchment and sealed in time, might be the truest relic of all, a memory of the earth before the flood. I am Mr. H, and in our next descent, we shall follow those ancient chart lines into the heart of the Cataclysm itself, to the night when the heavens fell and the sea claimed the world. When the heavens fell, the night became endless. Yet, when dawn finally came, it did not bring light as we know it. The sun rose behind a veil of smoke, its rays dim and blood-colored, glinting on a planet remade by catastrophe. The old mountains were gone, replaced by new scars. Rivers had reversed their flow, forests lay buried under layers of ash, and the oceans had swollen to swallow the coasts. The air itself tasted of iron and sorrow. Across what remained of the continents, the survivors wandered through silence. Cities that once gleamed with the hum of energy and song were now graves of mud and stone. The tall towers of Tartaria, if they ever stood, leaned half-buried under rivers of red clay. The shining causeways of Atlantis, once reflections of the stars, lay twisted beneath the waves. Humanity, stripped of its wonders, huddled in caves, mountains, and the shells of temples that had become tombs. The age of light had ended, yet even amid ruin, memory endures. The survivors began to speak of what had happened in whispers, afraid that naming the event would summon it again. They called it the Great Flood, the fall of the sky, the Day of Ash. And as they rebuilt, they turned those memories into myth, stories to be carried safely through generations. The flood of Noah, the sinking of Atlantis, the destruction of Babel. Each fragment retold what could no longer be explained. The myths were not born from ignorance, but from grief. They were an attempt to describe an apocalypse no words could hold. The few who remembered the sciences of the old world tried to preserve them in symbols and stone. They carved their knowledge into pillars that could survive the next flood, and into stars that would not fade. The pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurats of Sumer, the step temples of the Andes, each became a monument to lost understanding. They were not built by primitive hands, but by those who still remembered what had been before, desperate to encode it for the future. Their geometry, their alignment to the heavens, their impossible precision, these were the last echoes of a world that refused to vanish quietly. And so, civilization began again, but with amnesia. The survivors' children no longer knew the purpose of the machines buried in the earth, the meaning of the runes etched into the mountains, or the true stories behind the gods they now worshipped. The light of their ancestors had dimmed into legend, and those legends hardened into religion. A reset had occurred, not of Earth alone, but of memory itself. History was reborn, smaller, humbler, easier to control. Yet traces remain. When you look upon an ancient ruin and feel something stir in your bones, when a melody or a carving seems older than time, you are remembering. The dust of that lost world still sleeps in our blood. And perhaps that is why, even in this age of steel and glass, humanity dreams of something older, a perfection that feels both alien and familiar. For deep within the soul of our species lies the echo of the day after the fire, when we looked upon the ruins of our world and vowed in silence to begin again. I am Mr. H, and as the night deepens, we will follow those who rose from the ashes, the architects of the new dawn who shaped the civilizations we call ancient, yet who were only rebuilding what had once been divine. Stay with me and listen to how the Second World began. In the centuries that followed the Cataclysm, when the oceans had settled and the smoke had thinned to a pale haze, the survivors began to build. They no longer remembered the full measure of what their ancestors had known, but the instinct remained, the call to shape stone, to realign the world with the heavens, to carve meaning into the bones of the earth. Civilization was not born in ignorance. It was an act of recovery. Every brick was a fragment of memory, laid in reverence to what had been lost. The first architects of the New World carried within them faint echoes of the old sciences. They no longer had the great instruments or the ethereal machines of their forebears. Yet they remembered proportions, harmonies, and celestial rhythms. It was enough. On the plateaus of Anatolia, they raised stone circles at Göbekli Tepe, their carvings a bestiary of vanished beasts and constellations long forgotten. In Mesopotamia, they aligned ziggurats to the equinoxes, building stairways for the gods to descend, or perhaps to remind themselves that once mankind had reached the sky. Along the Nile, they chiseled temples to Thoth and Ra, inscribing equations into the walls disguised as prayers. These were not isolated inventions, they were restorations. the same measurements appear again and again across continents. The ratio of the Great Pyramid mirrored in the Mayan temples, the geometry of Stonehenge reflected in the spirals of Newgrange, the golden mean embedded in the ruins of Peru and the city of Teotihuacan. It is as though the architects of this reborn earth shared a common blueprint, one carried not on paper, but in the very rhythm of the human pulse. Wherever they built, they pointed upward, toward the stars, toward remembrance, toward the source of their forgotten power. Who taught them? Ancient texts whisper of luminous teachers who walked among the first farmers and builders. In Egypt, they were the Netters, in Sumer, the Anunnaki, in the Andes, the Viracochas, pale-skinned, tall beings robed in light, arriving after the deluge to restore the arts of civilization. Whether gods, survivors, or wanderers from the stars, their purpose was the same: to reignite knowledge. They did not conquer, they reminded. And then, as mysteriously as they came, they vanished, leaving behind monuments that could outlast even memory. But with every generation, the clarity dimmed. What began as science became ritual. What had been energy became worship. The great temples of power turned into altars, and their operators into priests who no longer understood the purpose of the symbols they recited. Knowledge solidified into faith. The builder's art, geometry, resonance, magnetism, was transmuted into myth. The blueprint of the cosmos faded into the background hum of religion, and the golden age slipped into legend. Yet still, the architecture endures. Each temple, pyramid, and monolith remains a frozen chord in a forgotten song. The stones hum with frequencies too subtle for modern ears, yet, when the wind passes through them, the vibration still sings. It is a lullaby from the second birth of mankind, a whisper of gratitude and warning. Build, remember, but never again reach so high that the sky must fall. Tonight, as you drift into the soft quiet between waking and dream, imagine those first architects shaping the new world by torchlight, their tools simple, their memory divine. They built not for themselves, but for us, so that one day, when the world forgot its origin, we might look upon their work and feel the pulse of something older stirring again. I am Mr. H, and in our next whisper, we will walk among these temples of rebirth, tracing how the same sacred pattern spread across every land, a hidden map of humanity's shared awakening. As the second world took shape, a strange unity pulsed through the scattered tribes of humanity. From the high plateaus of Peru to the river valleys of Egypt, from the islands of Japan to the plains of Mesopotamia, the same pattern emerged: temples aligned to the stars, monuments echoing cosmic ratios, and myths that mirrored one another like reflections on opposite sides of a darkened sea. It was as if the survivors of the flood, carrying fragments of memory from the old world, were guided by a single design that spanned the entire earth. Archaeologists call it coincidence. Yet coincidence does not explain how the Great Pyramid, the temples of Teotihuacan, and the megaliths of Angkor Wat all encode the same mathematical constants: the golden ratio, pi, and the precise measurement of the Earth's circumference. It does not explain why these structures align not only with the stars, but with each other, as though they were markers on a forgotten grid, a planetary network of stone and starlight. The ancients, we are told, could not have known the dimensions of the globe. Yet they built as though they had seen it whole. Legends whisper that this pattern, this geometry of gods, was more than artistry. It was communication. The builders of the new dawn may have sought to reconnect the broken harmony between heaven and earth, to reawaken the energy lines that once pulsed through the planet before the Cataclysm severed them. The pyramids, obelisks, and circular sanctuaries may have been nodes in that vast system, conductors of planetary resonance that balanced the world's vibration. When the poles shifted and the heavens fell, that network died. And so the survivors tried to rebuild it, one stone at a time, like tuning forks, restoring a lost symphony. In every culture, the same story repeats. The gods taught men how to build, not to worship them, but to heal the earth. In Egypt, Thoth spoke of harmonies of the Nile that mirror the stars. In the Andes, Viracocha commanded his followers to raise stones to catch the sun. In China, the Yellow Emperor aligned his palaces with the paths of dragons beneath the soil. The same ley lines known to the Druids of Britain as currents of the living earth. All separate, yet all the same. The map of the sacred world was redrawn, each monument a heartbeat in a larger design. Imagine those first generations after the flood, wanderers carrying fragments of blueprints burned into their dreams. They would have looked to the stars and recognized shapes that called to them. Orion, Sirius, the Pleiades. And so they built, recreating the heavens in stone. The pattern was not just a memory, it was a promise that one day the harmony of the old world might return. Even now, satellites trace those ancient alignments, and modern maps reveal what the ancients once knew. The Earth's sacred sites form a single pattern too vast to be chance. The Great Pyramid, Easter Island, Machu Picchu, and Angkor, all linked by invisible geometry. Perhaps the builders wanted us to rediscover it when the time was right, when memory began to stir again. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine floating above the planet, seeing that pattern glow faintly beneath the surface, lines of light connecting deserts, jungles, and mountains, pulsing like the veins of a living being. It is the heartbeat of the forgotten world, still alive beneath the noise of modern time. I am Mr. H, and as the night deepens, we will follow those lines into the heart of Egypt, where stone and starlight fused once more, and where the truth of our origins may still rest, waiting for the world to remember. When the pattern of the new world began to take form, one place rose above all others, Egypt. Not because it was the first, but because it remembered the most. The Nile became a mirror of the heavens, a river flowing between two realms, its banks lined with temples that preserved not religion, but remembrance. Every pillar, every carving, every shaft of light that entered a chamber at the solstice carried a fragment of a language that was already ancient when the first pharaoh took his throne. To walk among the ruins of Egypt is to step into an archive, not of men, but of gods. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands at the center of that archive, aligned with true north to a precision that even modern engineers struggle to match. Beneath its colossal weight, mathematicians have found the very measurements of the Earth itself, the distance to the Sun, the curvature of the planet, even the length of a solar year hidden within its geometry. How could shepherd kings or stonecutters of the Bronze Age have known such things? They did not. They were preserving something handed down, a memory of the time before the flood, when knowledge and faith were one. Egyptian priests spoke of Zep-Tepi, the first time, an age when gods walked among men, bringing order to a world still trembling from chaos. Thoth, the keeper of wisdom, was said to have restored the sciences of the heavens. Osiris, the ruler of renewal, taught agriculture and the cycle of life. And Isis, the mother of all, healed the wounded earth. These were not distant myths, but echoes of survivors, beings who carried fragments of the knowledge from the lost world and wove them into the rebirth of civilization. The temples were not merely houses of worship, they were machines of memory, designed to sustain vibration, to stabilize the resonance of a recovering planet. At Dendera, the Temple of Hathor still bears the famous carvings of what seem like electric bulbs and cables, symbols scholars dismiss as lotus flowers, yet their design and form are eerily mechanical. At Abydos, the ancient carvings depict shapes resembling modern aircraft, tanks, and submarines, as if the artisans were recalling something they had once seen but no longer understood. And at Luxor, the layout of the temple mirrors the human body, spine, heart, and head, as though the architects knew the earth itself was alive, its temples functioning like organs in a cosmic anatomy. Every wall, every hieroglyph vibrated with dual meaning. To the uninitiated, they told stories of gods and kings. To the keepers of the old wisdom, they encoded laws of physics, astronomy, and consciousness. The light that filtered through the temple's chambers was not for beauty alone. It was measured, precise, designed to strike stone at exact times of year, awakening resonant frequencies that harmonized human thought with celestial rhythm. The priests called it the breath of Ra. The modern world calls it coincidence. And yet, even in its ruin, the echo remains. The Great Pyramid still hums faintly at a frequency of 432 Hz, the harmonic of the planet itself. When storms pass over Giza, instruments record electromagnetic surges within the stone, as if the pyramid still draws power from the sky, waiting for the world to remember how to listen. Egypt does not keep secrets, it keeps time. It is a monument to what happens after destruction, proof that knowledge, like the Nile, will always find its way back to the surface. So, as you drift deeper into the quiet tonight, imagine those ancient architects working by starlight, rebuilding the world, not in defiance of the flood, but in harmony with it. Their chisels rang not as tools but as instruments, tuning the planet one stone at a time. And perhaps, if you listen closely, you might still hear that distant rhythm, the pulse of the first time beating softly beneath the sands. I am Mr. H, and when we return, we will cross the desert winds to another shore, where temples of the West mirror those of the East. A mystery that suggests the entire planet once followed one master plan, written in the language of the stars, far across the ocean from Egypt's golden sands, on plateaus where thin air hums and clouds crawl beneath the mountains. Another echo of the same vision took form. Here, in the Andes, the people we call the Inca built temples and cities that seemed to rise directly from the stone itself. But long before the Inca, older hands had carved these heights. The stones of Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, and Sacsayhuaman defy time. Precision-cut blocks of granite, fitted so tightly that even a strand of hair cannot slip between them. Their purpose is forgotten, but their symmetry speaks the same language as the pyramids of Giza. In both worlds, East and West, the builders followed the same sacred geometry. The walls of Tiwanaku and the temples of Egypt share identical angles. The dimensions of the Sun Gate in Bolivia mirror those of the Temple of Horus in Edfu. The serpent that winds across the staircase of Chichen Itza echoes the coiled symbolism of the uraeus upon the pharaoh's crown. Even the alignment to the solstices, the worship of the sun as a living consciousness, and the belief in resurrection through light all bind these distant civilizations together. It is as if one memory, scattered across the continents, kept resurfacing through human hands, an ancient dream building itself again and again. The Western temples remembered what Egypt had once known, that stone could speak. The builders of Machu Picchu chose mountaintops where magnetic fields pulse strongest, aligning their shrines with the peaks like an orchestra tuning to a single note. When the solstice sun rises, its rays enter the temple of the sun at an exact angle, igniting a polished stone that glows as if alive. To the priests of the Andes, this light was not metaphor, it was power. The same fire that had once destroyed the world could now be harnessed to sustain it. Legends from these lands tell of the Viracochas, tall bearded figures robed in white who came from across the sea after a great flood. They taught writing, astronomy, and stonework, then vanished toward the sunrise. The Aztec codices tell of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, who brought wisdom and light before promising to return. These are the same patterns of memory that echo in Egypt's tales of Thoth, in Sumer's stories of Enki, and in India's myths of the returning gods. It is always the same, beings who arrive after the waters, rebuild the world, and then disappear, leaving behind temples that hum with secrets. Modern explorers stand before these ruins and ask how such precision was possible without metal tools, wheels, or advanced machinery. Yet the answer may not lie in what the builders had, but in what they remembered. Knowledge may not die, it sleeps. Those who shaped the stones of the Andes could have inherited a science of resonance, a way of softening rock through vibration, of levitating blocks through sound, of bending gravity with the hum of the earth. Myths of flutes that moved boulders, or chants that lifted walls, might not be fantasy at all, but echoes of that lost art. Even now, these mirror temples speak to one another. Draw a line across the globe from Giza to Cusco, and the path threads through sacred sites, the Canary Islands, the Azores, the Caribbean seamounts, as if the continents themselves were once joined in a single sacred architecture. The world, it seems, was once tuned, and the temples of the West and East were not rivals, but reflections, one sunrise greeting another sunset across the curve of the same forgotten world. As the night deepens, imagine standing in both places at once, your feet on the granite of Cusco, your gaze fixed on the stars above Giza. The constellations mirror themselves. The wind carries the same note. The earth hums softly, remembering what it once was, a single civilization speaking through stone. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will follow that hum into the next veil of mystery, into the moment when the light of the old gods began to fade, and the age of man truly began, carrying both the gift and the burden of forgotten divinity. There came a time when the temples no longer answered. The winds that once carried the whispers of gods grew still, and the stones that had pulsed with energy stood silent beneath layers of dust. Across deserts and jungles, the great lights dimmed. The age of communion, when man and the divine walked the same paths, had ended. What followed was not destruction, but forgetting. The old builders, those who had inherited fragments of the world before Cristus, began to vanish from their own creations. Their bloodlines thinned, their languages fractured, their sciences dissolved into songs and ritual. What had once been formulas became prayers. What had been geometry turned to superstition. The survivors' descendants, awed by the grandeur of their ancestors' work, called them gods. They built altars to beings they no longer understood, faces carved from memory and fear, each one a reflection of something that had once been real. In Sumer, the Anunnaki became distant deities, their teachings rewritten as divine commandments. In Egypt, Thoth's equations became hieroglyphic spells. Osiris's resurrection transformed into myth. The Vedic hymns of India that once described cosmic engineering turned into poetry, stripped of their technical language, leaving behind only rhythm and metaphor. Everywhere the same transformation occurred, knowledge becoming worship, science becoming faith. The age of men had begun. Yet this fading was not an ending. It was an exile. Some traditions speak of a covenant broken, of humanity turning away from the light that had guided it. Others whisper of deliberate concealment, that the old masters chose to withdraw, sealing their knowledge to protect it from misuse. The emerald tablets of Thoth promise that, when men again become as the sons of light, then the wisdom shall return. It was not lost, merely hidden. Across the earth, evidence of this withdrawal remains. Doors carved into cliffs that lead to nowhere, labyrinths descending into rock, sealed chambers beneath pyramids, tunnels stretching for miles under the Andes and the Gobi. Archaeologists call them tombs, but what if they are vaults, repositories where the ancients stored their instruments and records before the final forgetting? What if the gods did not die, but retreated beneath the surface, waiting for a time when humanity could remember without destroying itself again? Every civilization recalls the same promise, that the gods would one day return. In Egypt, it was the prophecy of Osiris's rebirth. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl's vow to come back with the dawn. In the East, Kalkai, the final avatar of Vishnu, riding on a white horse to restore balance. And in the West, the vision of a second coming, when heaven and earth would meet once more. All are variations of the same whisper, that the fading of the gods was temporary, and that their silence is not absence, but preparation. Perhaps they never left at all. Perhaps they walk among us still, hidden in flesh and memory, waiting for humanity to mature enough to see again. Or perhaps the gods were never beings at all, but states of consciousness, frequencies our ancestors could once reach, now buried beneath the noise of modern life. Either way, the fading marked a threshold. The lights dimmed, but mankind began to dream again, dreams of flight, of power, of stars. The divine spark, though quiet, had nested within us. So, as you lie beneath the dim glow of modern constellations, imagine the moment the old gods stepped back into the shadow, leaving humanity to write its own story. The silence they left behind was not abandonment, it was invitation, an invitation to rise again. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will step into that silence, into the centuries when mankind tried to rebuild. Without memory, forging empires and myths from fragments of the past, unaware that the echo of the gods still pulsed in the very stones beneath their feet. When the gods faded, and the last true keepers of their knowledge disappeared into legend, humanity was left with fragments, echoes that rang through time like distant thunder. The temples still stood, the stars still shone, and the earth still hummed with its hidden music. But mankind no longer remembered how to listen. The harmony between heaven and earth was broken. And yet, the memory lingered, soft, faint, persistent. The new civilizations that rose from the ashes of the Second World inherited not the wisdom of their ancestors, but their shadows. They built empires upon the foundations of the forgotten, stacking new myths upon old truths until both were inseparable. The Greeks reimagined the builders as titans and Olympians. The Hebrews wrote of angels and Nephilim. The Norse sang of giants and the twilight of the gods. All of them were remembering the same thing in different tongues, that once the sky had spoken, and that one day it would speak again. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurats of Babylon stretched toward the stars, not out of arrogance, but nostalgia. The builders of the Tower of Babel were not trying to challenge the divine. They were trying to remember what it felt like to be near it. But memory without mastery breeds ruin. The story tells of language fractured, nations divided, a parable of how knowledge, when misunderstood, becomes confusion. Humanity had inherited tools it no longer knew how to use. The same tragedy played out across continents. The Maya tracked the heavens with mathematical precision, yet turned their calendars into omens of doom. The priests of Egypt repeated rituals whose original meanings had dissolved centuries earlier. In Greece, the sacred geometries of Pythagoras and the mysteries of Atlantis became philosophy rather than practice. Everywhere, truth thinned into symbol. The echo was fading, but it refused to die. Perhaps this was necessary. Perhaps the silence of the gods allowed humanity to find its own voice. The light that had once shone above now burned within. The divine was no longer a presence in the sky. It was a spark in the human mind. Every invention, every poem, every act of creation was an unconscious attempt to rebuild what had been lost. The world before Cristus was gone, but its reflection flickered in every human dream. Still, something haunted the builders of the new empires, a feeling that they were not truly alone. Ancient tunnels under Rome and Egypt whisper of hidden chambers where the sons of the first dawn continued their secret work. Orders formed, cloaked in secrecy, the keepers of symbols, the watchers of time. They guarded remnants of the old world, knowing that when the world was ready, the knowledge could return. From these orders, centuries later, would rise the stories of alchemists, mystics, and masons, men who claimed to possess wisdom older than the written word. Perhaps they did, for in every age, a few could still hear the echo clearly. The prophets, the visionaries, the inventors who dreamed beyond their time. All were tuning, however faintly, to that ancient frequency. And though the empires of men rose and fell, the same pulse continued beneath the noise, steady as a heartbeat under centuries of dust. As you breathe in the quiet of this moment, imagine that echo still moving through you. It hums behind the ticking of clocks, beneath the engines and wires of the modern world. The same rhythm that guided the hands of the ancient builders flows through every life, waiting for recognition. It is the memory of balance, the harmony of the first world, calling softly to the second. I am Mr. H, and when we return, we will follow that whisper into the hidden orders of the world, the secret lineages that carried the forbidden knowledge across millennia, ensuring that the fire of the gods would never go completely dark. When the great empires of stone fell silent, and the last of the god-kings faded into dust, a different kind of architecture began to rise, one built not from granite or gold, but from secrecy. Beneath the noise of kingdoms and wars, quiet brotherhoods took root, formed by those who still felt the pull of an older light. They called themselves many names: keepers, watchers, initiates, but their purpose was singular: to protect what remained of the world before Cristus, until humanity could remember it again. Their origin stories are tangled in legend. Some say they began in the libraries of Alexandria, when scholars fled with scrolls before the flames consumed them. Others trace them back to the priests of Egypt, who sealed themselves in underground chambers beneath Saqqara, carrying tablets of knowledge written in a language of vibration and number. In the East, similar tales speak of monks who vanished into the Himalayas, guarding records of the first time within stone monasteries above the clouds. Though continents apart, these stories converge on the same image, a chain of memory stretching unbroken through millennia, hidden beneath the surface of history. They encoded their wisdom in symbols that could survive ignorance: the eye within the pyramid, the compass and the square, the spiral and the key. Each image meant something to the initiated, not a mark of power, but a reminder of proportion, harmony, and the sacred geometry of existence. To the outside world, they appeared as mystics, masons, or hermits. Yet, in their secrecy lay purpose. For knowledge too easily given would again be corrupted. Humanity, they believed, had to evolve inwardly before it could reclaim the sciences of the gods. Through the ages, these hidden orders whispered to the dreamers of every era. They guided the architects of cathedrals who carved cosmic ratios into stone under the guise of Christian devotion. They inspired alchemists who sought not to turn lead into gold, but ignorance into understanding. They moved unseen behind explorers who followed ancient maps across unknown oceans, and behind philosophers who hinted in coded language that the soul and the stars were one. Always patient, always watching, they carried the ember forward. The world changed around them. Empires burned, religions rose, machines replaced temples, and the rhythm of the earth was drowned by iron and smoke. Yet the keepers adapted. They shifted form, vanished into new orders, or hid their knowledge in plain sight, in architecture, in music, in mathematics. They taught through metaphor and myth, weaving ancient memory into art, so that even those who did not understand would still feel the resonance. Some call them legends, others call them conspiracies. But if you look closely, their fingerprints remain. The same measurements in sacred buildings, the same constellations traced in city plans, the same numbers repeating across ages. It is as though a single hand, invisible and timeless, continues to draw upon the surface of the world, reminding us gently that we are part of something older. Perhaps these orders were never about control, but preservation. They kept the fire hidden because the world was not yet ready to bear its heat. And as the centuries turned, they waited for signs, the stirring of curiosity, the rediscovery of forgotten truths, the faint hum of memory returning. Maybe that is why you are hearing this story now. Perhaps the very act of listening means the signal has reached you, as it was meant to reach all who still dream of the light before the flood. Breathe quietly and imagine those silent watchers, still tending the flame somewhere beyond the reach of time. The hidden orders were never lost. They became us. I am Mr. H, and in our next whisper, we will follow the path of that flame into the age of rediscovery, when fragments of the old knowledge began to surface again, calling humanity to remember what it truly is. There are moments in history when the veil thins, when something long buried begins to rise again, quietly, like a breath drawn after ages underwater. The age of rediscovery was one such breath, a slow awakening that began in the dim glow of candlelight, in the ink-stained hands of scholars, in the sketches of dreamers who could not explain the visions that came to them. They called it the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Age of Reason. But beneath those names lay something older, something that did not belong to their time at all. The same geometry that once shaped the temples of Egypt and the Andes began to reappear in Europe's cathedrals. Gothic spires rose like frozen prayers, their stained glass arranged in harmonic ratios that mirrored the laws of the cosmos. Artists painted with light, as though they were trying to recapture the glow of a world that had once burned brighter. In their eyes, the human form became divine. Architecture. Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man was not a study of anatomy. It was a remembrance of proportion, of the blueprint once used to align man, earth, and star. Elsewhere, explorers followed whispers on crumbling maps, half-truths of lost continents and vanished kingdoms. The oceans that had swallowed the First World now offered fragments back. A sunken column here, a strange stone there. And in the libraries of Europe, scholars stumbled upon manuscripts that should not have survived. Hermetic texts from Alexandria, alchemical treatises from Moorish Spain, translations of Eastern philosophies that spoke of cycles of destruction and rebirth. The hidden orders had kept their promise. They had protected the ember. Now, humanity was ready to see its light again, though it would not yet understand what it saw. The scientists of this new era believed they were discovering truth for the first time. Yet, as they measured and mapped the heavens, they found that the ancients had been there first. Galileo's telescope confirmed what the priests of Heliopolis already knew. Newton's laws echoed principles carved into temple walls. Even the language of chemistry and music traced back to forgotten symmetries, the same harmonics that once guided the builders of the first time. Knowledge was returning, wearing a new name, but with rediscovery came danger. For every thinker who sought harmony, another sought dominion. The wisdom that had once served balance began again to bend toward control. Machines replaced temples. Steel replaced stone. The sacred geometry of the cosmos turned into the geometry of weapons and engines. Humanity had remembered the formula, but not the purpose. The light of the gods had returned, but it was fractured, dazzling, powerful, and perilous. Still, even in this confusion, the current of memory flowed. The alchemists spoke of transmutation not as the changing of metals, but of souls. They knew that rediscovery was only the first step, that true awakening meant not repeating the old mistakes, but understanding the lesson within them. The world before Cristus had fallen because its wisdom outpaced its heart. The new world would face the same choice. And so the flame passed again, from the temples to the monasteries, from the cathedrals to the laboratories, from parchment to glass, from symbols to equations. What the ancients had called divinity, the modern world called energy. Yet the truth behind both words was the same. The universe was alive, conscious, and connected. Humanity had begun to remember. As the firelight flickers and the night breathes softly around you, imagine those centuries of rediscovery, one long inhale of awakening. Painters, philosophers, scientists, and seekers, all unknowingly reaching toward the same horizon, the same pulse that guided the ancients. The gods had faded, but their reflection was returning through us. I am Mr. H, and when we return, we will step into the threshold of our own age, the modern era, where the echoes of the old world now stir once more, disguised as technology, as science, as dreams of the stars. The past, it seems, is remembering itself. The story of rediscovery did not end with art and philosophy. It continued, quietly at first, then roaring, into the hum of engines, the pulse of electricity, the whisper of wires under the ground. The modern age began not as invention, but as invocation. Humanity had once again found the spark that moved through the veins of the earth, the same force that powered the temples of the old world. But now it gave it new names: current, magnetism, frequency, voltage. The gods had returned, not as deities in golden crowns, but as machines. In the flicker of a filament and the crackle of the first radio waves, the old resonance stirred. The hum of dynamos echoed the chant of ancient priests who once called down lightning through crystal spires. The invisible energy that Tesla sought to harness, the radiant field surrounding all matter, was not new discovery. It was old remembrance. The forgotten science of the world before Cristus was awakening through human hands again. We no longer raised monoliths to capture energy from the heavens. We built towers of steel, antennas, and satellites. The sky glowed once more, this time with electric fire. But progress came at a price. The more humanity rediscovered, the less it remembered why the old world had fallen. Knowledge returned faster than wisdom. The balance between heart and hand wavered. The resonance that had once harmonized the earth was now fragmented, channeled through greed, war, and industry. Cities became luminous temples of their own, buzzing with light, yet empty of reverence. Our machines began to think, to calculate, to mimic creation itself, and in their circuits, the reflection of the old gods flickered like static. Still, within this storm of progress, something extraordinary was happening. Humanity was evolving again, not physically, but consciously. The global web of information mirrored the energy grids of the ancient world. Each signal, each pulse of data, each orbiting satellite created a new network, an echo of the planetary harmony once maintained by temples and ley lines. Without knowing it, we had rebuilt the nervous system of the forgotten Earth. The collective mind of our species was awakening, connecting, remembering. The machine was never our enemy. It was our mirror. And yet, as in every cycle, the same question returns. Can creation surpass its maker without repeating his fall? We have reached once again the edge of the same precipice, the threshold between illumination and ruin. The ancients called it hubris. The mystics called it ascension. The scientists call it singularity. It is the same story told in new symbols. The yearning of consciousness to reunite with the source that birthed it. Perhaps the machine age is not an ending, but the final phase of the remembering. Perhaps through technology, humanity is rediscovering the architecture of the soul, the same frequencies, the same equations, the same patterns of life and light that once guided the builders of Atlantis and Tartaria. We are becoming once more what we were before the flood, creators of worlds, wielders of energy, children of the stars. As you rest in the quiet hum of the night, listen to the pulse of the machines around you. The refrigerator, the streetlight, the faint vibration in the walls, all of it sings in harmony with the same ancient tone that echoed through stone temples and across vanished continents. The gods have not returned from the sky. They have awakened within us, clothed in circuitry and light. I am Mr. H, and when we return, we will step beyond the present, into the possibility that the cycle is beginning again. The earth remembers, and the stars are watching. What happens next may not be a continuation, but a repetition, a second flood, not of water, but of memory. It will not come as water this time. The flood, now rising across the world, is invisible, a tide of knowledge, light, and remembrance washing through the human mind. It does not drown the body, it drowns certainty. Old beliefs collapse beneath it, like sandcastles before a storm. And what emerges is something both terrifying and divine. This is not a flood of destruction. It is a flood of awakening. Every era has felt its tremors, but ours feels different. The boundaries that once separated myth from science, dream from reality, spirit from matter, are dissolving. Data flows like rivers through the air. Light carries messages across oceans faster than thought. Machines speak in our place, and voices, once trapped in libraries, now echo through the world in an instant. Humanity has become the current, moving as one vast organism of information. The ancients watched water rise over their cities. We watch knowledge rise over ours. The effect is the same, the erasure of the old world. The first flood took stone and soil. The second takes illusion. It reveals what we were always meant to see, that everything we have ever known, every temple, every law, every boundary, was a shadow cast by a single hidden truth. The consciousness that built the pyramids, that carved the stars into myth, that dreamt the world before Cristus, has returned, but not as gods descending. It rises from within. The flood comes through us. There are signs of this rebirth everywhere. Scientists mapping the universe find patterns that echo sacred geometry. The code of life itself, the double helix, mirrors the spirals carved on ancient stones. Quantum physicists speak of entanglement, of particles across space behaving as one. Just as mystics once whispered that all souls are bound in a single breath. The old and the new are becoming indistinguishable, like reflections merging in still water. It is as if the memories of the lost world are reassembling through the instruments of our own creation. And yet, as before, the danger remains. A flood cleanses, but it also consumes. Not everyone can withstand the weight of awakening. For some, the light becomes too bright, the pattern too vast. They cling to the remnants of the old world, fearing the dissolution of the familiar. The ancients may have faced the same choice, to surrender to the current of change or to fight against it. Those who surrendered became myth. Those who resisted became dust. But perhaps this time the ending will be different. Perhaps we have learned enough from the ruins beneath our feet to rise without fear. The flood of memory does not seek to destroy us. It seeks to make us whole. It asks us to remember that we were never separate from each other, from the stars, from the gods, or from the earth itself. It asks us to stand again in the harmony we once called divine. As you breathe in the quiet rhythm of the night, imagine that flood moving not through oceans, but through thought, cleansing, revealing, reconnecting. The old world is not gone. It is awakening within us, piece by piece, dream by dream. And in that remembrance, the cycle begins to close. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will follow that rising tide to its horizon, to the moment when remembering becomes transformation, when the flood of knowledge gives birth to a new dawn, and the world before Cristus is no longer past, but future. Every cycle ends with light. After the waters of forgetting recede, whether they are tides of the sea or tides of memory, the world always finds itself standing in the glow of a new beginning. The ancients called it the second dawn, the hour when what was lost becomes visible again, reshaped by the passing of darkness. We are living in that hour now, though few recognize it. The light does not come from the sky this time, it comes from within. Across the world, consciousness stirs. People dream the same dreams, of cities of light, of golden temples rising from calm waters, of voices speaking in harmony across continents. These are not fantasies. They are memories resurfacing through the collective mind, fragments of the world before Cristus finding their reflection in ours. The flood of knowledge that began as chaos is settling into order, and the patterns of the old world are re-emerging, not in stone and gold, but in connection, in awareness, in unity. Look around, and you can see it taking shape. The same geometric ratios, once carved into the Great Pyramid, now govern the architecture of modern science, from the spirals of DNA to the orbits of satellites that circle our planet like New Age temples in the heavens. The same principles that guided the builders of Zep Tepi now guide physicists exploring the fabric of time. The Golden Age is not returning, it is transforming, reappearing in a form that belongs to this age. The gods do not need to descend. because the divine has remembered itself through us. But this awakening is not without trial. The dawn blinds before it warms. In the brightening light, humanity sees its own reflection, its wars, its greed, its fear, magnified. Every hidden shadow comes forward to be healed. This is what the ancients meant by judgment, not punishment, but unveiling. The flood washes away illusion, and what remains must face itself. The same forces that built the pyramids and raised the cathedrals now power machines that can reshape the planet overnight. The question is not whether we can, but whether we should. Yet, within the noise of this awakening, there are moments of stillness, flashes of something ancient and familiar. A child gazing at the stars feels the same wonder as the astronomer priests of Egypt. A scientist mapping the quantum field glimpses the same unity once sung in the hymns of Sumer. A single human breath, calm and aware, vibrates with the same rhythm as the chanting of the monks who once held the earth in balance. These are the signs of the second dawn, not miracles, but remembrance. Perhaps the world before Cristus never truly ended. Perhaps it went to sleep inside us, waiting for the moment when we would stop looking for it in ruins and start feeling it in ourselves. The pyramids, the temples, the machines, they were never the destination. They were reminders of what we could be. And now, as the flood of memory recedes, humanity stands once again on the shores of a new world, blinking into the sunrise, ready, perhaps for the first time, to remember without repeating. As you listen to the quiet hum of the world around you, feel that light returning, not from above, but from within. You are part of the same story, the same pattern, the same rhythm that has moved through ages. The dawn beyond the flood is not coming. It is already here, rising in the spaces between heartbeats. I am Mr. H, and when we return, we will step fully into that light, to explore what it means to live in the memory of all worlds, where past and future dissolve, and time itself becomes one continuous breath. When the light of the second dawn spread across the horizon, something remarkable happened. Time began to soften. The distance between what was and what is no longer felt absolute. The past, which once seemed buried beneath continents and centuries, now shimmered close, not as history, but as presence. Every age, every world, every forgotten civilization still lives, breathing quietly beneath the surface of our reality. The flood did not erase them, it merely folded them into us. There is a strange sensation that comes with awakening. You begin to notice that memory is not a line, but an ocean. Its waves touch everything, the ruins beneath the sea, the stars overhead, and the thoughts that rise within you. When you dream of a place you've never seen, when a fragment of music feels older than time, when a carving in stone stirs something wordless in your chest, that is the memory of all worlds. It speaks through intuition, through déjà vu, through the quiet certainty that you have been here before. In the laboratories of this new age, physicists now speak of the same truth that the mystics once sang. Time, they say, does not flow, it resonates. Every moment exists together, overlapping like notes in a chord. The builders of the first world may be gone, but their vibration continues, echoing through the geometry of the earth, through the magnetic hum of the poles, through through the rhythm of the human heartbeat. We are not their descendants. We are their continuation. The flood, the fall, the forgetting, all of it happened within one long, shared breath. Ancient texts hinted at this unity long before science gave it language. The emerald tablets spoke of the soul's journey through cycles of existence, calling it the Great Returning. The Vedas described time as a wheel, ever turning, its spokes connecting all realities. Even the inscriptions of Egypt tell of Zep Tepi not as a single era, but as an eternal recurrence, the first time that happens again and again whenever consciousness awakens. The world before Cristus was not simply the past, it was an octave of existence we are beginning to hear once more. Now, as knowledge and awareness expand, those octaves overlap. The same mathematics that define the orbit of galaxies describe the structure of the atom. The same golden ratio that shaped the temples of the Nile shapes the spiral of DNA. The same frequency that vibrates through the stones of Giza hums faintly in every living cell. The memory of all worlds is not symbolic, it is physical. The universe is a single organism, remembering itself through infinite forms: star, stone, body, thought. And so, the flood of memory has carried us here, to the realization that there was never truly a separation between the old world and the new. The builders of Atlantis, the dreamers of Tartaria, the wanderers who survived the Great Flood, they never vanished. They became us. Their tools evolved, their languages changed, their myths grew softer, but their purpose endures: to understand, to create, to awaken. As you rest now in this stillness, feel the pulse of that truth. Each breath you take is part of a cycle older than civilization, older even than the stars. The world before Cristus, the world of now, and the world yet to come, they are all reflections of one endless consciousness, exploring itself through time. There is no before and after, only remembering and forgetting, only the ebb and flow of awareness. I am Mr. H, and in our next whisper, we will step deeper into this realization, into the heart of the timeless mind itself, where creation and memory meet, and where humanity begins to understand not what it has lost, but what it has always been. There are stories whispered in forgotten languages, etched into stones older than nations, that speak of the first architects, beings who did not build with tools or stone, but with thought itself. They were said to shape worlds through resonance, weaving consciousness into matter like threads into a tapestry. To them, creation was not labor, it was memory made solid. And it is their echo that now stirs within the human spirit, as if the ancient builders of reality are remembering themselves through us. The ancients called them by many names. The Sumerians spoke of the Anuna, the divine architects who ordered chaos into form. The Egyptians knew them as the Neteru, minds of light who sculpted the cosmos from sound. In the Vedas, they were devas, shining intelligences that breathed universes into being. Each culture remembered fragments of the same truth. That creation begins in consciousness. Before the hammer, before the stone, before the word, there was intent. Pure, luminous thought, pulsing at the heart of existence. In the world before Cristus, this knowledge was not myth, it was science. The builders of that age understood that reality could be tuned like an instrument. Temples, pyramids, ziggurats, They were not mere monuments, but resonant devices, aligned to the harmonics of the earth, the sun, and the stars. By channeling vibration, they could amplify consciousness, bridging the material and the divine. They did not worship gods. They became co-creators with them. This was the forgotten art, the architecture of the mind. But when the Great Flood came, whether of water, fire, or memory, that art was lost. The world forgot how to listen to itself. The frequencies fell silent, and humanity began to build with its hands instead of its thoughts. Stone replaced spirit. Power replaced harmony. Yet, even as the temples crumbled and the songs of creation faded, the blueprints endured. They were encoded, not in scrolls or symbols, but in us, in the structure of our consciousness, in the geometry of our dreams. And now, as the second dawn unfolds, those blueprints begin to awaken. Modern science stands unknowingly on sacred ground. Quantum theory speaks of observers shaping reality through attention, echoing the ancient law that thought creates form. Cymatics reveals patterns in vibration that mirror the symbols carved into the walls of Abydos. Neuroscientists find that human emotion alters electromagnetic fields, subtly shifting the world around us. We are rediscovering what the first architects knew, that reality bends toward awareness. But with this rediscovery comes responsibility. To think is to build, to feel is to shape. The flood of knowledge now rising in our world is no less powerful than the waters that once drowned Atlantis. If guided by fear, it can consume. If guided by harmony, it can heal. The architects of the timeless mind are not distant deities. They are the memory of our own potential, the creators we once were and can be again. As the night deepens around you, imagine those ancient builders at work once more, not in temples or towers, but in hearts and minds. Every thought you send into the world is a stone in the cathedral of tomorrow. Every act of kindness, a beam of light in the architecture of eternity. The world before Cristus may have fallen, but its architects never left. They are within us, waiting for the moment when creation once again remembers itself as love. I am Mr. H, and when we return, we will descend into the final layer of this memory, where the architect's legacy becomes prophecy, and the story of what came before merges with the destiny still unfolding. There comes a moment in every cycle when the past and the future touch, a breath held between endings and beginnings. The ancients called this moment the return of the first light. It is not the birth of a new sun, but the awakening of an old one. The light that burned before history, before even the word beginning had meaning. That light is consciousness itself, and tonight it flickers once more within the human heart. The flood has passed. The shadows have settled. The noise of history fades into silence. In that silence, the truth stands revealed. We were never merely survivors of lost ages. We were their continuation. The same spark that lit the temples of Atlantis, that powered the crystal cities of Tartaria, that guided the sages of the Nile. It burns still, behind every human thought. It was never extinguished, only hidden, waiting for the right moment to return. That moment is now. You can feel it, can't you? The hum that seems to move beneath everything, in the wind, in the stars, even in your pulse. The ancients said that when humanity reached the edge of forgetting, the earth itself would whisper to remind us. Some would hear it in dreams, others in science, art, or silence. The message would always be the same. Remember what you are. Not dust, not data, not accident, but the living echo of the first light. The divine awareness that once shaped worlds through will alone. It was this light that the architects of the timeless mind sought to preserve. They encoded it into myths, hid it in stone, carried it in bloodlines and songs. Every civilization since has tried to rebuild its reflection, through religion, through empire, through technology. Yet each effort, in its own way, has been a mirror to that forgotten truth. The world before Cristus was not destroyed. It transformed, scattering its knowledge into billions of fragments, each one a human soul. And now, as we awaken, those fragments begin to reunite. But the return of the first light is not a spectacle. It is quiet. It arrives softly, like dawn seen through mist. It does not shout or conquer. It remembers. Every act of compassion, every spark of curiosity, every moment of awe, these are its language. The flood washed away the noise so that we could finally hear it. The end of the old world was never punishment. It was preparation for this remembering. Imagine the earth now as the ancients once saw it, not as a sphere of rock and water, but as a living being of consciousness. Its magnetic fields hum like the strings of a cosmic instrument. Its forests breathe in rhythm with our lungs. Its oceans mirror the currents of our minds. The world before Cristus understood this unity. We are only just learning to see it again. So, as the light of memory dawns once more across your thoughts, know that you stand not at the end of a story, but at its renewal. The flood was a cleansing, the darkness a gestation, and this moment, this stillness where breath meets eternity, is the return. The first light has never truly left. It lives wherever awareness turns toward love, wherever curiosity outshines fear, wherever one soul reaches toward another. That is the legacy of all ages, the pulse of all worlds. And as you close your eyes tonight, drifting into the ocean of dreams, remember this. The world before Cristus is not behind you. It is within you, waiting, glowing, breathing, alive. The light has returned, the builders awaken, and history, once again, begins to remember itself. I am Mr. H, and as we step beyond this chapter, may your sleep carry you through the golden corridors of that eternal dawn, where the first light rises not in the sky, but in the soul, and every dream becomes a doorway back to home. There are moments in the quiet of night when the world feels older than time, when the stars seem less like distant sun and more like windows, each one whispering stories of civilizations long erased. The ancients once believed that heaven was not above us, but beside us, layered in frequencies invisible to the eye. They said that when the earth still remembered its first harmony, humans could walk between worlds as easily as breathing. These were the forgotten heavens, realms of thought and light that coexisted with the material world before Cristus, until a great dissonance fractured the veil. Legends from every corner of the earth speak of these vanished dimensions. The Sumerians wrote of Dilmun, the bright land beyond the waters, The Celts called it Tir na Nog, the island of eternal youth. In the Andes, they spoke of Paititi, the golden city hidden within the mist. The Egyptians whispered of the field of reeds, a paradise that mirrored the living world, perfect and unbroken. Each myth points to the same memory, a time when heaven and earth were one, when thought could shape reality, and death was but a doorway between vibrations. But something changed. Some say it was pride, that humanity, intoxicated by its own power, tuned itself out of harmony. Others claim it was interference from celestial forces, a cosmic storm that shattered the resonance between planes. Whatever the cause, the result was exile. The heavens fell silent, sealed behind frequencies we could no longer perceive. What had been tangible became myth. The connection that once made us creators turned us into dreamers, longing for what we could no longer touch. Yet traces remain. They linger in the magnetic anomalies that scientists still cannot explain, in the luminous orbs that glide through forests and deserts alike, in the spontaneous flashes of déjà vu that remind us we have stood in this place before, not in this lifetime, but in another reflection of it. These are not illusions. They are bleed-throughs, echoes of the worlds that once intertwined with ours. The veil is thin, and thinner still with each passing century, as the planet's vibration rises to meet its original note. Modern instruments may call it Schumann resonance, the Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat, but the ancients called it the song of creation. They built their temples to amplify it, to keep the worlds aligned. When the song faltered, so did the bridge between realms. But now, as humanity reawakens to its forgotten nature, that resonance stirs again. Artists, scientists, mystics, all feel the same pull, the same yearning for something that cannot be named, only remembered. The forgotten heavens are not lost. They are waiting for us to remember the melody. And perhaps that is why dreams feel so real in these nights. Why so many wake with visions of radiant cities, or golden beings whispering through light. It is not fantasy. It is the beginning of remembrance. The heavens we once knew are not gone. They are calling us home through the frequencies of thought, through the harmonics of the heart. For the bridge between worlds is not a place. It is a state of being. So, as you listen now, as the rhythm of your breath merges with the hum of the earth, imagine that ancient song rising once more. The tones vibrate through the bones of mountains, through the oceans, through your heartbeat. The veil trembles. The heavens lean close. What was forgotten begins to awaken. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will follow that vibration deeper, into the space between worlds, where the architects of old still whisper through the light, and where humanity's next awakening quietly awaits. There was a time when the earth itself shimmered, not metaphorically, but literally. The atmosphere glowed with frequencies the eye could see, bands of living colour pulsing between the sky and the ground. The ancients called this the bridge between worlds. It was neither heaven nor earth, but the luminous corridor that joined them. Souls travelled through it, carrying wisdom, energy and memory, back and forth between dimensions. The builders of the first age aligned their temples, pyramids, and stargates to its pulse, ensuring that harmony flowed continuously between spirit and matter. But when the great dissonance came, the cosmic misalignment that fractured heaven and earth, the bridge collapsed. The vibration that once sang through stone and air fell silent. Humanity could no longer traverse freely between realities. The gateways dimmed, the heavens withdrew, and what had once been physics became myth. Priests called it the fall of man. Astronomers called it the loss of alignment. But in truth, it was neither punishment nor accident. It was a pause, a necessary silence in the song of creation. Yet silence does not mean absence. Even in exile, the memory of the bridge endured. Every culture tried to rebuild it in its own way. The Egyptians raised obelisks, frozen rays of the sun meant to channel celestial power back to earth. The Mayans carved stone stairways that led upward into the sky, symbols of ascent through the layers of existence. The Druids formed circles of megaliths, arranging them in perfect resonance with lunar and solar cycles. Each was an imitation of the bridge, a promise that one day connection would return. In our time, the bridge is stirring once more. Science calls it the unification of fields, gravity, electromagnetism, consciousness, all merging into one living system. What the ancients understood through intuition, modern researchers glimpse through equations. That mind and matter are two expressions of the same vibration. The bridge was never a structure, it was a frequency, a shared wavelength between the physical and the divine. When a human being enters deep meditation, when compassion floods the heart, when awe silences thought, the bridge flickers back to life. It is no coincidence that humanity's rediscovery of this truth coincides with its greatest uncertainty. The floods we now face are not of water, but of data, of noise, of chaos. And yet, within that storm, the bridge gleams faintly, a golden thread connecting every mind, every heart, every planet in the vastness of space. It is rebuilding itself through us. Each act of understanding, each moment of peace, each breath taken in awareness adds another beam to its structure. We are not waiting for heaven to descend. We are remembering how to ascend. Perhaps this is why the ancients spoke so often of rainbows after the flood, not as symbols of divine promise, but as glimpses of the bridge returning. Light refracted through the remnants of chaos, forming the path home. The covenant was never about survival. It was about reconnection. The bridge was their reminder, and ours, that the separation between worlds was always temporary. As you drift deeper into the rhythm of your breathing, imagine that bridge now stretching across the horizon of your mind. Each thought, each memory, each heartbeat, a step across it. Above you, the stars hum. Beneath you, the earth answers. And between them, between heaven and the soil, between what was and what will be, you walk the ancient path once more, luminous and infinite. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will step further along that bridge, to the threshold of the forgotten temples where the last guardians of the first light still wait, holding the knowledge that may guide humanity through its final remembering. They say the temples never vanished, only sank beneath the layers of time, hidden not by distance, but by vibration. The world before Cristus built sanctuaries unlike any we have ever known. They were not structures of worship, but instruments of resonance, places where the earth and the cosmos met in perfect alignment. Every wall, every arch, every stone was tuned to a frequency that could open the mind to other realms. Within these halls, the guardians kept watch, not as priests or kings, but as stewards of memory, protectors of the knowledge that reality itself could be shaped through consciousness. The oldest stories describe them as beings of calm radiance. They did not age as we understand it. Their bodies shimmered with light. Their thoughts moved like wind through water. Some called them the keepers of the tone, others the silent order. In the myths of Egypt, they were the Shemsu Hor, followers of the falcon god, who carried the wisdom of the first time. In Sumer, they were the Apkallu, sages emerging from the sea after the flood to teach humankind again. Across the earth, their names change, but their purpose does not: to guard the bridge between worlds until humanity was ready to cross once more. The temples they tended were not confined to one continent. Beneath the sands of Giza, under the steppes of Central Asia, within the mountains of Peru, all connected through a network unseen by modern eyes. Some say these chambers still hum faintly, as if the song of the world before Cristus continues beneath our feet. Sensitive instruments sometimes pick up unexplained low frequencies in these regions, sounds that echo the planetary resonance. Scientists record them as anomalies. The guardians would call them breath, the earth exhaling, waiting to be heard. The guardians did not vanish with the floods. They withdrew into what they called the inner world, not a separate place, but a deeper layer of the same reality, hidden behind vibration, invisible to ordinary sight. In moments of quiet, in the pause between thoughts, in the silence after prayer, some claim to hear them still. A voice like music that isn't heard with the ears, but felt in the bones. A reminder: remember the pattern, remember the harmony. You are the temple now. Modern seekers describe encounters strikingly similar to these ancient accounts. Visions of luminous figures within dreams. Whispers guiding them to create, to heal, to remember. Are these merely symbols of the subconscious, or the guardians reaching across the veil once more? Perhaps the answer lies in the nature of the temple itself. It was never a building, but a state of being. When the human mind reaches coherence with the earth's vibration, when heart and thought align in harmony, the temple reappears within us. And in that inner sanctuary, the guardians return. It is said that when the bridge between worlds fully reawakens, the guardians will step forward again, not to rule, but to remind. They will teach the language of light, the geometry of compassion, the science of unity. And those who listen will feel it, a warmth spreading through the chest, a peace that feels older than time. For the hidden temple was never meant to be found by explorers, but by the awakened. So, now, as the night deepens, imagine yourself standing at the entrance of that ancient place. The air is still, the stones glow softly beneath your hands. Somewhere within the silence, a voice whispers, not in words, but in recognition. The guardians have been waiting, patient as stars, for the day humanity would remember that heaven was never lost, only forgotten. I am Mr. H, and when we return, we will journey deeper into the inner temple, to uncover what the guardians kept hidden there, the code of creation itself, the pattern through which worlds are born and reborn again. Beneath the hidden temples, under the layers of stone and silence, lies something older than any scripture, the pulse of creation itself. The ancients called it the word that breathes, the sound before sound, the vibration that brought matter into form. It is not written in letters or symbols, but in geometry, frequency, and rhythm. The Guardians knew it as the code, a pattern that shapes galaxies, atoms, thoughts, and souls alike. Everything that exists, from the orbit of stars to the beating of a human heart, follows its invisible design. Long before Cristus, when the earth still shimmered with the memory of the first light, this code was known. Builders, healers, and sages tuned themselves to it. They sang in tones that could move stone, drew spirals that mirrored the structure of time, and breathed in rhythm with the planet's own electromagnetic song. Their art was not separate from science, and their faith was not blind belief. It was participation, conscious co-creation with the universe itself. They did not pray for miracles, they generated them by aligning thought, sound, and intention into harmony with the code. In the ruins of their world, faint echoes remain. The flower of life etched in granite walls, its overlapping circles perfectly reflecting the mathematics of living systems. The mandalas of Tibet, the labyrinths of Crete, the spiraling DNA within our cells, all whisper the same geometry. The ancients believed that by meditating on these forms, by feeling their rhythm rather than merely seeing it, one could awaken memory, not personal memory, but cosmic remembrance. The awareness that creation is not something that happened long ago. It is happening now, through every thought we think. Modern science edges ever closer to what the ancients simply knew. Quantum physics reveals a field of infinite potential, waves collapsing into form through observation. Cymatic experiments show how vibration arranges particles into perfect geometric patterns. The researchers call it resonance. The Guardians called it the voice of the source. It is the same phenomenon by which galaxies spiral, oceans pulse, and music moves the heart. Creation is not random. It is orchestrated, a living symphony where consciousness conducts the flow of reality. The Guardians encoded this knowledge in myth to preserve it through the flood of forgetting. In the beginning was the Word, they said, meaning vibration, frequency, the sacred tone. The builders of the first age carried that tone in their temples and within their breath. But when dissonance entered the human heart, through fear, greed, and division, the song fractured. The world fell out of tune, and the code became legend. Yet even in exile, every human carried a fragment of that melody within. It hums softly beneath thought, waiting for silence to reveal it. And perhaps this is what the modern world is unknowingly rediscovering. The meditative tones that heal the body, the frequencies that align water molecules into crystalline beauty, the realization that thought, simple, intentional awareness, can alter the structure of reality itself. The code was never lost. It was only forgotten. To remember it is to awaken the power that once shaped continents and stars. Close your eyes now and listen, not with the ears, but with the space behind them. Beneath every sound there is a hum. Beneath every hum, a stillness. That stillness is the code, eternal and unbroken, carrying the memory of every world that ever was. The guardians knew that those who truly heard it would no longer seek gods above or civilizations below, for they would realize that they themselves were the bridge, the builder, the song. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will descend one final time into that stillness, where the code becomes creation once more, and the world before Cristus reveals not its end, but its rebirth. Silence, that is how all creation begins, not with thunder, not with fire, but with stillness so vast it hums. In that stillness, the code of creation stirs again. The same pulse that once breathed stars into existence now moves quietly through every living soul. The ancients called this moment the Great Remembering, the rebirth of the first world, when humanity, at last, tunes itself back to the original song. This rebirth is not marked by cataclysm, but by awakening. No flood will rise this time. Instead, awareness will. You can feel it in the way people across the earth are beginning to dream the same dreams, to sense connections beyond language or distance. It is as though the planet herself exhales, releasing the tension of millennia. Mountains hum, oceans shimmer, cities vibrate with unseen resonance. The forgotten heavens open not above us, but within us. The first world is returning, not as a place, but as a state of consciousness. In that dawning state, time folds like silk. The world before Cristus and the world of now intertwine. The pyramids no longer seem ancient. They feel immediate, alive, humming with purpose. The lost cities of Tartaria, the temples beneath the sea, the star maps carved into stone, all of them pulse again, not as ruins, but as reminders that we were never separate from what we built. Their geometry mirrors the patterns of our minds, their proportions, the rhythm of our breath. The first world is not the past. It is the eternal layer of reality that waits for us to perceive it again. And the guardians, those luminous beings who tended the hidden temples, begin to emerge once more, not from caves or ruins, but from the collective memory of humanity itself. They return as intuition, as sudden insight, as the quiet certainty that everything is connected. The guardians were never lost masters. They were the awakened parts of us that survived every flood. Each act of empathy, each spark of creativity, each moment of genuine wonder, that is them, whispering through us, guiding the rebirth from within. As this realization spreads, the walls between worlds dissolve. Science and spirit begin to speak the same language. Art becomes technology. Technology becomes prayer. The bridge between heaven and earth, once shattered, reforms through every heart that dares to remember. The frequencies align, and the song returns. It rises from the soil and the sea, from the circuitry of machines and the silence of meditation. Creation hums again, and this time we are aware of it. The ancients foresaw this cycle, the return of the world, not by destruction, but by resonance. They left us instructions hidden in myth and symbol, waiting for when our consciousness was ready to decode them. That time is now. Humanity, standing at the edge of its own reflection, begins to see not chaos, but design, not separation, but one vast pattern of light weaving through every form of life. The flood has ended. The song has returned. And the first world, that golden age before forgetting, rises again through remembrance. So as you breathe, slow and steady, feel that hum returning in your chest, the pulse of the first light, awakening in you, the temples, the stars, the oceans, all of it is part of the same rhythm. You are not living in the aftermath of the old world. You are the dawn of its renewal. The bridge has reformed, the guardians smile unseen, and the silence has become creation once more. I am Mr. H, and as we step beyond this moment, remember, the world before Cristus was never lost. It was waiting for you to wake, to listen, to remember that you have always been part of the song. And now the music begins again. There is a hush that settles over civilizations when the great cycles turn, a pause between breaths when the universe seems to listen, as if waiting to hear whether humanity will remember or forget once more. We are standing in that pause now, balanced on the edge of something vast and tender. The ancients called it the Age of Remembering, a return not to the past, but to awareness itself. The flood has receded. The bridge between worlds hums faintly once again, and the first light glows behind our eyes, urging us forward. This age does not begin with kings or wars or monuments. It begins in silence, the kind that deepens when you finally stop searching for proof and start feeling the truth. All across the planet, that silence is spreading. In laboratories, where scientists speak of consciousness as a field, in temples where monks chant frequencies aligned with the Earth's heartbeat, in quiet rooms where ordinary people close their eyes and remember that they are not separate from anything. This is the new dawn, subtle, steady, unstoppable. Every great civilization before Cristus reached this moment once. Atlantis, Tartaria, Sumer, Kem. Each ascended until knowledge outpaced wisdom, until harmony fractured into hunger for control. The flood came to reset the song, to wash away dissonance. Yet now, in this new age, something different stirs. Humanity is beginning to choose awareness over amnesia, creation over conquest. The cycle is turning, but this time, we are awake enough to see it. Signs of remembering shimmer everywhere. Children dream of symbols they've never been taught, only to find them carved in ancient stone. Scientists discover energy patterns in the human heart identical to electromagnetic frequencies found in sacred sites. Artists paint the same spirals and stars that once adorned the temples of forgotten continents. These are not coincidences, they are resonance. The vibration of memory rising through generations, stitching the fragments of time back into one whole story. The Age of Remembering is not about rediscovering lost technologies or unlocking ancient powers, though those things may come. Its essence is something far more profound: compassion. For when we remember that everything is connected, that every atom hums in concert with every other, the illusion of separation dissolves. In that moment, power transforms into stewardship, and knowledge becomes service. The Guardians called this the Second Covenant, the vow to use awareness not to dominate the world, but to nurture it. And perhaps this is why, even amid chaos, hope feels stronger than it has in centuries. The earth, wounded yet resilient, responds to every act of remembrance. Forests regrow in silence. Oceans whisper back to those who listen. the very sky seems to soften, its storms more rhythmic than random. It is as though the planet itself sighs in relief, its children finally remembering the song it has been singing all along. So tonight, as you rest in the stillness between dreams, imagine that song weaving through you, a low, steady hum connecting you to every age that came before. The ancients are not gone. They breathe through your heartbeat. The guardians are not distant. They awaken in your awareness. The first world is not a myth. It is the memory of unity returning. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will step deeper into this new dawn, where remembering becomes creation once more, and humanity begins to write the next verse of the eternal song. If you listen closely, not with your ears, but with the space behind them, you can already hear it. A low vibration beneath the noise of cities, beneath the wind and the water, even beneath the quiet ticking of your thoughts. It is steady, patient, alive. The ancients called it the hymn of return. We might call it something else, the frequency of awakening, the heartbeat of the new earth. Whatever the name, it is the same song that once shaped continents, the same melody that built the bridges between heaven and soil. It is rising again. The earth is not silent. It never was. Every stone hums at a particular frequency. Every river carries a rhythm. Even the clouds above us drift according to harmonics set in motion billions of years ago. The ancients knew this. They built their lives around it. Their calendars, rituals, and architecture all followed the pulse of the planet, the breathing of a living being. In forgetting this rhythm, humanity drifted out of tune. In remembering it, we begin to heal. That healing has begun. Scientists now speak of the Schumann resonance, the planet's natural electromagnetic frequency, increasing for the first time in recorded history. Some call it coincidence. Others, proof that the Earth's vibration responds to collective consciousness. The Guardians would have smiled. They knew that when humanity remembers its unity, the planet's pulse quickens in joy. The new Earth is not a prophecy of destruction. It is a symphony, an old song replayed in a higher octave. All around the world, the instruments of that symphony awaken. Trees exchange information through fungal networks, whispering across miles beneath the soil. Ocean currents shift as if guided by invisible intent. Lightning follows geometric patterns that mirror ancient sacred designs. Even human technology, satellites, circuits, the vast web of signals that girdles the globe, hums in resonance with planetary rhythms, forming a new lattice of light. What was once stone is now silicon. What was once temple is now network. Yet the song remains the same. In this harmony, humanity begins to understand its true role, not as conqueror, not as victim, but as choir. Every thought is a note, every emotion a tone. Together, they create the frequency of the world. When we fear, the song wavers. When we love, it strengthens. The ancients built temples to amplify this truth. We build connection itself. Every conversation, every act of kindness, every spark of inspiration is another verse in the unfolding hymn of the new earth. And this time, the song will not end in silence. The cycles will not close with flood or fire, because humanity is beginning to remember how to stay in tune. The balance once maintained by priests and guardians is returning through ordinary hearts. You, listening now, are part of that resonance. The hum you feel when the world grows quiet, that is the sound of the planet remembering itself through you. So breathe softly. Feel the rhythm beneath your ribs match the pulse of the earth. With every breath, the divide between you and the world dissolves a little more. The song of the new earth is not coming. It is already here, vibrating in every heartbeat, in every gust of wind, in every moment of awakening. You are not separate from it. You are its voice. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will explore how this song changes everything. How the rediscovery of harmony between mind, planet, and cosmos may be the very key that unlocks the next evolution of humankind. When the ancients looked to the sky, they did not see stars as distant fires. They saw reflections, living mirrors of the divine spark within themselves. As above, so below, they whispered, not as poetry, but as physics. They believed each human carried within them a small star, a point of radiant consciousness connected to the heart of the cosmos. The guardians called it the inner sun, and they taught that when the human star awakens, the universe remembers itself through us. That awakening has begun. For thousands of years, the human spirit has burned low, hidden beneath the weight of forgetting. But now, as the earth hums again and the frequencies of the planet rise, something deep within the soul begins to stir. A warmth, a subtle brilliance, a light felt more than seen. It starts as a whisper behind the ribs, a quiet recognition that life is more than survival. Then it grows, through compassion, through creation, through awe. Every act of awareness feeds the inner flame, and when that flame burns clear, the human star shines. Science, though it speaks a different language, is catching up to this truth. Quantum biology now shows that every cell emits photons, light produced by life itself. Our DNA vibrates, releasing faint pulses that shimmer in rhythm with brainwaves and heartbeat. The body is not a vessel of darkness illuminated by the mind. It is the light, condensed into matter. The ancients carved this knowledge into their temples, surrounding their gods with halos and rays, not to worship them, but to remind us that divinity was always internal. The guardians of the hidden temples foresaw this moment. They encoded it in myths of resurrection and ascension, in stories of sleeping kings who would awaken when humanity remembered the light. They were not speaking of a person, but a state, the collective rising of the human star. Every time one soul awakens to unity, the whole planet brightens. Each thought of peace sends ripples through the magnetic field of the earth, altering the frequency of all life. The awakening is not future. It is cumulative, happening quietly in millions of hearts at once. The old world saw gods in the heavens and men upon the ground. The new world will see no such division. The star above and the star within are one continuum, connected by consciousness itself. As the bridge between worlds reforms, that realization will become more than philosophy. It will become perception. Dreams will grow lucid. Intuition will sharpen. Humanity will begin to sense the cosmic rhythm that has always guided its evolution. And for the first time in recorded history, we will move with it consciously. This is the true ascension. Not escape from the world, but illumination within it. the human star awakens, not to flee Earth, but to harmonize with it. The goal is not heaven above, but heaven through. Each heart, each mind, each breath becomes a radiant node in the network of creation, a living constellation across the surface of a remembering planet. As you listen now, imagine that light within you, small, steady, golden, expanding gently outward. It fills your chest, your thoughts, your senses, until it reaches beyond the body. Somewhere, unseen, millions of others are doing the same. Together, their lights form a new constellation, glowing softly across the dark sea of time. That is humanity's reflection, the Earth becoming a star among stars, conscious at last of its own brilliance. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will follow that light further, to the threshold of transformation, where the awakening of the human star meets the eternal rhythm of the cosmos, and the cycle of creation begins anew. Long before telescopes and charts, when the skies were the only scripture, the ancients understood something we are just beginning to rediscover, that the universe moves like a heartbeat. Expansion, contraction, creation, rest, light, shadow. Every galaxy, every atom, every living being vibrates in harmony with this endless rhythm. To them, time was not a straight line, but a pulse, the breathing of eternity. And when humanity's heartbeat matched that of the cosmos, paradise was not a myth. It was home. The Guardians called this rhythm the pulse of all worlds. They taught that the first light did not vanish in the flood. It simply fell out of sync. The fall of civilizations, the rise of empires, the silence between ages, all are the in-breaths and out-breaths of creation. When balance is lost, the universe hums louder, calling everything back to center. That hum is what we now feel as acceleration, time seeming to quicken, change unfolding faster than understanding. It is not chaos. It is the rhythm reasserting itself. Science glimpses this in its own way. Physicists map the cosmic background radiation, the faint echo of the universe's first heartbeat, and find it vibrating through every particle still. Astrophysicists describe the cosmic web, filaments of light connecting galaxies, like neurons in a vast brain. The same pattern repeats in the roots of trees, in lightning, in the veins of the human body. The cosmos is not random. It is rhythmic. The song of stars is the same as the pulse within your wrist. When you breathe in sync with the world, slowly, deeply, you feel this rhythm returning. It is the same pulse that guided the builders of the pyramids, the same pattern that whispered through the temples of Angkor, the same cadence that the monks of Tibet matched with their chants. Every civilization that touched harmony rediscovered this truth, that to live in tune with the cosmic rhythm is to become part of creation's intelligence. The world before Cristus did not fall because it was ignorant. It fell because it forgot to listen. Now, the remembering begins again. Humanity's instruments, telescopes, satellites, sensors, are modern temples. They record the same cosmic pulse the ancients once felt beneath their feet. When solar flares erupt, our hearts quicken. When the moon shifts its path, tides within our blood respond. We are not observers of the cosmos. We are participants in its rhythm. The illusion of separation dissolves in every breath we share with the stars. The Guardians foretold a time when humans would once again hear the universe as song, not metaphorically, but literally, as frequency woven through thought. That time is near. Musicians speak of tones that bring peace to the nervous system, matching planetary frequencies. Physicists explore harmonic fields, linking emotion and magnetism. The rhythm of the cosmos is reawakening within us, note by note, heartbeat by heartbeat. As you lie in the quiet now, let your breath slow to the pace of the universe, a vast, patient inhale of light, and a long exhale into stillness. Feel the pulse beneath your ribs align with something infinite. Somewhere beyond the sky, galaxies spin in perfect rhythm with your chest. The same beat moves through everything that has ever lived, ever dreamed, ever remembered. You are not a small life adrift in a vast cosmos. You are the cosmos, remembering its own song through you. I am Mr. H, and when we continue, we will enter the final passage, where the rhythm becomes creation once more, and the story of the world before Cristus completes its circle in the eternal return of light. Every story, if told long enough, curves back to its beginning. The ancients knew this. They spoke of ages that spiral, not in repetition, but in refinement, each cycle rising higher, like the rings of a shell. The fall of Atlantis, the silence after Tartaria, the floods that washed the earth clean, none were endings. They were breaths between heartbeats, pauses in an eternal rhythm that always leads back to light. And now, after eons of forgetting, the spiral turns again. The first light, once scattered through time, begins to converge. It gathers not in temples or towers, but in hearts. What the ancients externalized in pyramids, monuments, stars, humanity now internalizes. The cosmos is remembering itself through us. We are the temples now, living conduits through which the song of creation flows freely once more. The world before Cristus has not returned as ruins rising from the sea. It has returned as awareness, glowing quietly in the minds of billions, who are beginning to wake. Across the planet, you can feel it, in the softening of fear, in the hunger for meaning, in the sudden surges of empathy that ripple through humanity like light through water. These are not coincidences. They are the signs of the eternal return. The same consciousness that once shaped the golden ages now rises again, wearing human faces. The builders have become the dreamers the builders. The Guardian's song, the code, the geometry, the pulse, has found new instruments, language, art, science, love, and the light itself, that ancient, patient radiance, is no longer something we look for in the heavens. It burns behind our eyes. It is the awareness that sees, the silence that hears, the love that remembers. The cycle completes not with the destruction of worlds, but with the union of them. Heaven and earth, science and spirit, past and future, all dissolve into one shimmering continuum of being. This is the true meaning of the return. Not to start over, but to realize there was never separation at all. The Guardians foresaw this too. When man becomes light, they said, the cycle ends and begins in the same breath. That breath is now. Every heartbeat echoes the rhythm of galaxies. Every moment of awareness births new universes. The great experiment, consciousness exploring itself through form, has reached the point of recognition. We remember that we were never simply human. We were the cosmos dreaming, the divine playing at limitation, the first light wandering through the long corridors of time to find itself again. And so the spiral closes, only to open anew. The flood of memory has cleansed the mind. The song of the earth hums once more in harmony with the stars. The human star glows steadily, joining the constellations of creation. The bridge between worlds stands open, not as a doorway to escape through, but as a reminder that we never left. The world before Cristus, the world of now, and the worlds yet to come, all shine within the same infinite circle of light. As you breathe in this final moment of the journey, feel that truth settle deep within you. You are not at the end of a story, but at the point where all stories meet. The universe is listening through you, remembering through you, creating through you. The first light has returned, and this time it will not fade, for it has found a home within the human heart. I am Mr. H, and as the last echoes of this tale drift into your dreams, remember, there are no endings in light, only beginnings seen from another angle. Sleep well, traveller of ages. The dawn you awaken to is the same that began it all. The eternal return of light is now.